Well, the Black Sea just got a lot more complicated. After a string of Ukrainian attacks on Russia's Shadow Fleet tankers near Turkish waters, Ankara is now talking to NATO about maritime safety and publicly telling everyone involved, including Ukraine, to stop hitting commercial ships in its exclusive economic zone. So, real quick note, day job was very busy. I am recording from my car, trying to get this out to everybody tonight. So just bear with me on this one. The audio, which is normally not awesome, same with the visuals, might be a little rough tonight. But I definitely wanted to follow up on the story from yesterday. And if you haven't checked, go back to the main channel page. There's a video that explains some of the background. I'll review it here real quick and give you some thoughts, and I'll try to get this out. But basically, over the last week, we've seen three key incidents at sea. First, the Ukrainian Sea Baby naval drones hit two sanctioned tankers, the Kairos and the Virat, and these were both near Turkey's coast in the Black Sea. The vessels have widely been described, reported as part of Russia's Shadow Fleet. This is that gray zone where there are older tankers under flags of convenience that are used to move oil around Western sanctions. And it's not just oil, as we've seen. But reporting from multiple outlets said that one tanker caught fire. It had to be evacuated. The imagery from that is pretty extreme. Both strikes happened inside Turkey's exclusive economic zone as the ships were headed toward Novorossiysk to load oil. But then came a third incident. Turkish maritime authorities reported that a Russian-flagged tanker carrying sunflower oil, right, an agricultural product this time, which was on the move from Russia to Georgia, that's the Mid-Volga 2 that we talked about yesterday, it was attacked roughly 130 kilometers off of Turkey's coast. The crew was unharmed. The ship did not request assistance, and it did continue under its own power toward the port of Sinop. Turkish officials, I read, they described the attack. Local media suggested also that a kamikaze drone might have been used. But here the story starts to split, and this is new. Ukraine's foreign ministry went on record denying any involvement, calling Russian claims propaganda, and even hinting that the whole incident might have been staged, pointing out that the reported route from Russia to Georgia via Turkey's exclusive economic zone doesn't make a lot of commercial sense. So against that backdrop, Turkey has started to react much more visibly. Their foreign minister met with NATO's Secretary General to talk specifically about Black Sea safety after these tanker attacks, including the ones that Kyiv has acknowledged. Ankara has condemned the strikes and made a point of urging all sides, Ukraine included, not to target commercial vessels in its waters. One of Turkey's major shipping companies has reportedly paused Russia-related activity out of safety concerns, which tells you that for operators that are actually moving this cargo, this is no longer an abstract political issue. There is a direct risk to their crews, to their ships, and honestly, even to their insurance costs. So if you zoom out, this fits into a bigger campaign that we've talked about on this channel before. Ukraine has been systematically trying to raise the cost of Russia's war by hitting its energy infrastructure, so refineries, depots, pumping stations, and now the Shadow Fleet that carries Russian oil through the Black Sea. Naval News, the Wall Street Journal, other outlets all frame the Kairos and the Virat attacks as a new phase in that maritime war. And I agree. Instead of just hitting ships near Crimea or purely military targets, Ukraine is now going after these sanction-evading fleet ships farther south in international waters and here near the Turkish Straits. At the same time, there have been drone attacks on the Caspian Pipeline Consortium's export infrastructure near Novorossiysk, and this is, as we've talked about, infrastructure that Kazakhstan depends on for most of its oil exports. So this has forced temporary repairs, rerouting through alternative pipelines. My read here is that Ukraine is trying to do three things at once. First, make it more expensive and risky for Russia to move oil by sea by showing that shadow fleet tankers can be hit even when they're not hugging Crimea. Second, they're signaling to shipping companies and insurers that doing business with Russia in the Black Sea, at least for now, just the Black Sea, carries real danger. That's how you put economic pressure on Moscow without firing a shot at NATO territory. The third, they're testing how far regional actors like Turkey are actually willing to tolerate this campaign before they really push back. Turkey's reaction suggests that we might be starting to get close to that line. This is, after all, a NATO member with its own very complex relationship with both Kyiv and Moscow. It sells drones to Ukraine and positions itself as a mediator, but it also has a huge stake in controlling the straits and keeping commercial shipping flowing. When Ankara publicly condemns the attacks and calls out Ukraine by name, when its foreign minister brings the issue to NATO's Secretary General, that's a signal that Turkey, they're not playing. They don't want its EEZ turning into a contested battle space, especially not over ships that on paper, right, at least on paper, are civilian, even if they're moving sanctioned cargo. For Ukraine, this definitely creates a bit of a dilemma. The naval drone campaign has been one of the few areas where Kyiv can reliably put pressure on Russia far from the front lines and at a relatively low cost. The strikes have already forced Russia's Black Sea fleet to pull back from Crimea and operate more cautiously, especially out of Novorossiysk, and they've complicated Russia's energy exports. But if pushing that campaign into Turkey's economic zone, its EEZ, if it risks alienating one of its most important regional partners and starts dragging NATO into detailed conversations about maritime safety, Kyiv may need to adjust how and where it operates. That could, and I'm speculating here, but it could mean focusing more on targets closer to Russia's own EEZ or on infrastructure at Russian ports rather than hitting tankers in areas where Turkey feels directly responsible for their safety or safe passage. So on the Russian side, at least so far, the response has been heavy on rhetoric and lighter on visible maritime action. We've seen threats, we reported on this yesterday, about cutting Ukraine off from the sea and about escalating strikes on Ukrainian ports, but we haven't seen clear open source evidence of large-scale new naval deployments or effective escorts for the shadow fleet, at least not yet. If Moscow does decide to send more warships out to escort tankers, that could actually give Ukraine more high-value naval targets, and it would put Russian ships at greater risk from the same drones that have already hit the fleet around Crimea. So the real story tonight isn't just another tanker was hit. It's that Ukraine's shadow fleet campaign is starting to bump up. It's ramping up against Turkey's red lines, and it may pull NATO even further into the conversation about Black Sea security. How Kyiv adjusts, how Ankara balances its role, and whether Russia is willing to put more of its fleet at risk to protect these tankers are all things worth watching very closely over the next few weeks. All right, I thank you, and I will talk to you soon.